Hello and welcome to your neighborhood show. I'm Carolyn, and the reason I started this podcast is because it actually comes from my own life's journey of growing up in Mumbai, India, in a very strong connected neighborhood where pretty much everyone knew everyone. And then over my 22-year marriage, I inadvertently, here in Australia, I inadvertently got disconnected or isolated rather. And after my marriage breakdown, I was kind of reflecting on my life and wondering, how did I come from that strong community and connectedness, and now when I need support the most, I don't have it. And so I went on this journey of wanting to get myself supported again and build that network of support around me. And in the process of doing that, I realized that there were many others like myself, and it's everywhere. There's disconnection everywhere. And so what the podcast is about drawing out beautiful stories, amazing stories actually, of everyday amazing people from their lives at times when they felt connected as well as disconnected, and to normalize it. But then how do we then move from times when we are disconnected and feel supported again? I've been so lucky to meet some amazing people through this process, and what I've realized is when I'm intentional about getting to know somebody, I can get to know them in 3 to 4 hours. And that's been the biggest blessing for me. Hello and welcome to your neighborhood show. I'm Carolyn, and this is episode 8. And our guest today is Christine Bagley-Jones. I love your surname, by the way. It's got a bit of a tune to it.
Oh, thank you.
And Christine is a longtime neighbor of mine when I lived in Wollongabba for 26 years. And I met her as part of a door-knocking community building project that I had initiated. And somehow we've kind of maintained connection. Even though I moved suburbs, we've kind of continued, even on Facebook, commenting here and there. I've seen your posts and whatever. But I'm so lucky that you said yes today to be here on my guest, because I know you're a very busy lady. But Christine is a long-time practicing psychologist. She's a mother of 5 gorgeous children. I don't know how she does it. She's a superwoman. She's an author. She's written a beautiful book called Creative Connections, which is why I wanted to interview her today. And she's also her I think the most important body of work, in my opinion, that she's created for the world is called My Life's Project. Is that correct, Christine?
My Finest Life.
My Finest Life, sorry.
That's fine.
It's an online course, and she'll tell us more about that as we go along. But welcome, Christine.
Thanks so much for having me, Carolyn.
And how are you feeling?
Feeling great today. I got up nice and early. It's Monday morning, and I've been to the gym, and I had the pleasure of interviewing you earlier on my podcast, Finding the You in Mum, which was just wonderful. So I feel like we've warmed the room quite nicely for today.
Yes, absolutely. And I thoroughly enjoyed being interviewed by you as well. It kind of, because I'm normally on the other side of the table interviewing people in this podcast. So it was really lovely to be interviewed for a change.
Brilliant. Your offerings were so on point with a lot of the issues that mums have in terms of maintaining and even identifying who they are as an individual, separate from the role of mum. And you were able to draw out some of the really big issues that I think people struggle with. And not only that, you had solutions or stories to help illustrate how you got yourself through those difficult dilemmas. So, yeah, thanks so much for that. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad. My pleasure. So our first question for you, given we haven't had too much of talking about this, learning about you too much in your personal life, I've kind of crafted a few questions for you, and we're just going to go with them. Brilliant. So the first one is, in your childhood, some in your early childhood, what's a recollection of a first, I suppose, time in your life when you felt connected or disconnected, supported or unsupported, that you can share with us?
It's interesting that you should even ask that question, because a lot of what has inspired me with the work that I've done as an adult is based a lot around my childhood. So while I had very supportive parents, there were quite a few factors that left me feeling very disconnected and very lonely for large chunks of my life. One of them was that we lived geographically further away from the school. We lived on acreage, so neighbourhood get-togethers weren't such a thing because the neighbours were so spread apart. I have an older living brother, but he's 11 years older than me. And then we had another brother who sadly passed away, who would have been 5 years older than me. So as well as, I guess, being a very little girl growing up unbeknownst to me in a grieving home, I also just felt very isolated. Once I'd get home from school or on the weekends, my mother was very traditionally brought up and her marriage was very traditional for the time, so she didn't drive or work. So I had to rely on my dad, who worked really long hours, to drive me places, which would mean I would just be stuck at home a lot. And I did feel lonely, and I felt a pining to be around people. I was good at making up games by myself and have imaginary, little stories that I'd play out, and cubby houses galore. We had lovely property with trees that I could build a cubby and all of those nice things. But I was still at the end of the day quite lonely. And I'd forgotten for many years, but my dad, before he passed away, for some reason reminded me of a little endeavour. I would have been about, I'd say 11 years old approximately, and I started the Fun Club. So it's a bit reminiscent of you door knocking when you wanted to connect with your community. I hand wrote flyers and put them in the neighbours around the block and then the next block that I knew had young kids my own age, inviting them to our house on a Friday afternoon once a fortnight, where we would do craft and have afternoon tea together.
Wow.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
11
my
years.
brother even mentioned it not that long ago about what a funny, quirky kid I was. And I was thinking, I don't know if it was quirkiness or just desperation for friends and connection. And it was a success. And Peter, my brother, was marveling at when he would see Fun Club in action in our little barbecue area with all our craft and our drinks beside us. A lot of the kids were quite a bit older, and there I was holding court, giving instructions. I was in my element, and maybe that was a real saving grace for me.
That is awesome. I love that story. That's just, I think similar to what you said just now, in our desperation, we just go out. Nothing stops you when you're desperate to connect, and we're all hardwired to connect as human beings.
Yes.
And especially as a young child, if you're suddenly and living far away. Did you say whereabouts did you grow up?
So we grew up in Algester next to Sunnybank Hills, and it was back before all of the subdivisions. So there were large parcels of land, and the school that I went to was, it was a 15-minute walk to the bus and then another, 15, 20-minute ride to the school. And then in the afternoon, it was the same in reverse, but you had to wait half an hour at the bus stop for the bus to arrive. So it was a real
out
trek.
Of the way, yeah.
Kids didn't come over for play dates. And if I was to be invited to a play date, it then logistically became hard how I would get home.
Yeah, and your father had to drive and bring you back.
He would be at work.
So out of this connection thing with the locals from your school did they come to your house, you said, in your courtyard?
They did.
Did you develop close friendships with any of them, any of those kids?
We did. There were a couple of friends that I forged really lovely friendships, actually about 3 for many years. Yeah. And if you think about it, we didn't have a lot in common. Yeah. All we really had was geography.
Yes.
We were nearby, and proximity was, and we know that that's one of the big ways people attract friends and maintain friends, proximity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was perfect for the time, and I didn't even see it as such a big deal. It just seemed like a really obvious step to do, and I didn't even think, oh, wow, that was an achievement. It was just like, cool, I've got some friends to hang out with, and at least once a fortnight I'm going to have them all over at my house. I can boss them around a little bit.
Oh, that's amazing. So you're quite enterprising even as a young girl, always wanting to, connect, like bring people together kind of thing.
I think in lots of different ways. I've got a laundry list of crazy things. I used to collect mulberries from our tree and bag them up and sit at the top of the street and sell them. Goodness knows who would ever want these mushed up, sitting in the sun, plastic bags of purple mush. But so many people would pull over and, spend the 50 cents for their mulberries.
I think probably as a lone child, you were a girl, you're much big age difference between your older brother and yourself, and you've got yourself to basically come up with ideas on how to connect and pass your time and whatever. But good on you. I mean, that's amazing what you were able to do and connect with, the locals.
It was fun.
What about your parents? Like, was there, did your parents have a good relationship between them?
My parents were very dutiful, and they have sadly both passed away, interestingly, only 19 days apart from one another. And that would have suggested a very close marriage. But in fact, they weren't close in any of the normal ways that we would identify closeness. They didn't have great communication. They didn't fight. They just did their lives almost like silos. So it didn't give me a lot of information around how to have a healthy marriage, even though they were fabulous parents and I had a really very beautiful childhood. I've got no complaints there. But they probably weren't role models in terms of what I would have been seeking. They were very good parents and they were good enough to each other. I guess, if anything, I knew a lot about what I didn't want. I wanted a marriage and I wanted a relationship where I felt extremely close and bonded and seen, and vice versa.
Yeah, so very similar to yourself. I never ever saw my parents fight. Never. They were I never saw them raise their voices, but I never saw them love each other either.
Yes.
So I suppose I never had that role model of what it looks like to have a great relationship, so to speak. But they were great parents in themselves, a great mom. I mean, I look up highly to my mother and father.
Yes.
But they can't be role models to us in every part of our lives, I suppose. And they say it takes a village to raise a child. So I was raised by the village, so I was very lucky. But as you grew up, I also have to say that, I look at you and David, your husband, and I always admire, I think, God, they've got a lovely relationship, or it comes across as a lovely relationship. So you've obviously picked up somewhere along the way, or being a psychologist, learned. How did you kind of, create this lovely relationship with your husband? Was it hard work, or did you, tell us about that?
I feel like the biggest decision that a person's going to make that will be most influential to their ultimate happiness and well-being will be their selection of their life partner.
Yes.
And I dated extensively in my younger years, and I had a lot of fun, but I was always very aware that I wouldn't be taking that final commitment lightly, and my standards were going to be high in terms of, their values, their relatability to me, their communication skills. And I didn't know what it would exactly look like. And then when I met David, it became really apparent.
Wow.
And, he's a remarkable human being, and you've spent some time with him. He is kind to a fault. He's enthusiastic. His support of the work that I do and of our children is quite remarkable. And the energy that he continues to maintain for, I have had like such a long list of crazy ideas and let's do this. And some of these things have been very expensive and epic fails. And we've lost money and time and energy, and never once has he begrudged it, because he knows it's all about, the quest and making the most out of life. And we enjoy each other's company. And, we've been together for, 25 years or something like that.
That is amazing.
Long time.
We need to bottle David's blood, I think.
I've often said I'd love to clone him. One, to keep doing all the chores and things that I come up with. One to hang out with.
But, you've got 4 girls and Sylvan who went to school with Damien. Yeah. But those girls are going to have, I think are going to have really good relationships, because they have their primary relationship with their father, and they're seeing the way their father and mother relate. So they've got great marriage role models, but also how a man should treat a woman.
Absolutely.
And they're so blessed.
He changed the nappies. He defers to me in areas that he knows I might have more skills, just like I just do the same for him. And I think one of the most amazing things with David is his lack of ego. Like he doesn't rely on the kudos from others or a title, or he finds his fulfillment in lots of little ways. bottling him would be, and the girls are already demonstrating that they've got a very high, they've set the bar high for their partners. 2 of them are currently in a relationship that I would have to say is reflective of those sorts of ideologies. And the other girl that hasn't found someone special at the moment, I think is because she just has, she's not short of admirers. She's extremely beautiful and funny and kind and intelligent, but she just isn't in a hurry because she's waiting to, even just in terms of dating, someone that really resonates.
Look, it'll happen when it kind of has
She's
to happen.
She's not in a hurry. She's happy,
And as you said, the most important decision one has to make is your life partner, So, wow, that's so amazing and very unique, I think, to hear a story like that. And I've always had this admiration for you both as a couple. And I've never ever said it to either of you, but I've seen how y'all interact. So thank you. I think to myself, whenever I go for a walk and if I see couples holding hands, you can tell from the energy between 2 people, you can tell, And I just think to myself, in my mind, I say a silent thank you to them as I walk past, because that's a little bit more love in the world is how I kind of interpret that. And I just say, oh, thank you, bringing a bit more love.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes, it's beautiful.
And, I just need to make it clear, it's not always rainbows and unicorns. We have our tough days and frustrations. And because we work together now a lot, he does a lot of work with my practice Plenish, just in terms of just on the sidelines, just supporting me. And when he's after hours, he's just got so much enthusiasm. But we do spend a lot of time together. And sometimes that, can lead to.
I totally get it.
What is it,
I worked alongside for 22 years, my ex-husband.
Yes. So we make sure we ventilate that as much as we can.
Of course. And as you said, communication can solve any problem.
Yeah. And, I think that's really key. And, but I just needed to make sure it was understood. It's not perfect by any means.
No, that's a given.
We have our days, both of us.
It's up, down, and all over the place. But as long as you can communicate, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Moving into your professional life as a psychologist, and you've been practicing for how many years, Christine?
30 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Goodness me.
Yes.
What do you see as would be like the biggest issue we face as a society today?
Well, there's plenty. There's plenty of issues that I've observed over my time, but I think, as you would probably predict with the work that you do, amongst the highest would be our disconnection from each other and from ourselves, from the planet. And that's a growing phenomenon. And I hear people sometimes saying, oh, we're going to circle back. We're going to abandon all of these things that are keeping us disconnected, like our devices, and we're going to reconnect. And Carolyn, I'm not seeing any evidence of that. I'm thinking that the solution won't necessarily lie in abandoning where we are in terms of our relationship with the digital world and the way we live our lives, and have our home set up as little silos where we drive into our garage with the roller door shutting us in without any interaction with another human, and the working from home phenomenon growing. We need to accept that this is just part of our life now. But what we can do is make space and opportunities to connect with others, because no matter what conveniences lie with us, the reality is we're still human.
Yes.
We aren't computers. We're not robots. As much as we might be leaning into AI more and more, we will get unwell physically and mentally if we lose sight of the fact that we are animals.
Yeah.
And we're not hermit crabs. We're the animals that love to connect and actually thrive on those relationships.
We're hardwired to connect. And I know from the little that I've studied about connection is that in the absence of connection, people will look to connect with something, and that often becomes either alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, substance abuse, to try and some addiction, which is not always healthy, because that void has to be filled of connection.
It's true.
I'm going to throw in a funny question over here, and that is, tell us the audience something about yourself that we would never guess about you, Christine.
Well, the reality is I'm a fairly open book. So when you posed that question to me before, I was thinking, gosh, I don't know if I've got a lot of surprises, except that people that know me really well would also know that I'm quite the extrovert. I have a beautiful circle of friends that I indulge myself by spending plenty of time with. I do connect a lot with them, and I spend a lot of time with my children one-on-one or as a collective. But I really do think I'm becoming more and more of an introvert. And my favorite pastimes increasingly are the time spent alone and spent doing solo pursuits. So I think somewhere along the line, and I'm not going to say it's the fact that I'm getting older and have less energy, I think I just am naturally gravitating to a more introverted way of life.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I can't say I'm not surprised, because I think you're out there meeting people all the time. You're listening to people's stories and their pain and suffering more often than not. And you've got a big family, so you're surrounded by people. So I would imagine wanting to have some alone me time and being more introverted would definitely look very attractive.
It's cherishable. In fact, my girlfriend and I were having a little joke about how our favorite place in the world is our bed. And she was like, doesn't that sound a bit depressing? And I'm like, well, it does, because a lot of people would say like Tahiti or, beachside somewhere. And in fact, while I love exotic locations, my bed is just so nice.
I know. And I saw it today in your boudoir. How do you say it? Boudoir.
Boudoir, yes. Yeah.
Beautiful big bed overlooking the water. That's just gorgeous. Just a magic spot. I wouldn't be wanting to leave it.
It's tricky some days. It's really hard when you're way up.
Yeah.
I could just stay in bed.
So can you share a time in your life when pursuing a personal passion of yours felt like you were going against your being a mum kind of, or mum role? How did you balance the two of them? Because you've got a busy life. You're a psychologist, you've written a book, you're running workshops, and you're a mum of 5 children. And that's not an easy task by any means. Your parenting is not an easy task. How did you?
Mean feat. I think that it's kind of always been a struggle and a juggle, because I did have these kids, and I'm very passionate about their well-being and loving them, and realizing that I only have, that particular little phase of their life for that brief time before they move into the next phase and the next phase, and then you blink and they're adults. So it wasn't lost on me, but neither was my burning passions, and there've been many. And even though it's a very broad umbrella being a psychologist, there's lots of ways you can slice and dice that career, and I've tried lots of different things and I've really enjoyed it. So I felt torn at different times, because for me it was always important to maintain my identity and my profession. I didn't feel that it was being less of a mum, but it was going against the tide, I think, of a lot of people who, may have thought that once you have that many kids, you've got this responsibility to kind of segue and make that your life. And I was just never willing to do that. And one of the examples was when I had my 5th child, and she was really young, and I had the opportunity to go to America to be trained with Brené Brown and her team.
Wow.
And it was not easy to get that opportunity, but it meant being away from the family and being further away than I'd ever been from them. And
how long were you there for?
I was only there for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But it was the idea of like I couldn't just get to them if they needed me.
Yeah.
And I would be but I knew that the work that I would be gaining by being a certified facilitator of her work and being forever part of that community was going to do so much in terms of my personal work as a psychologist. So with David's blessing and the kids' blessing, I went over and did it, and it was really great.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love Brené Brown, and her work is, I love what she does, and it's kind of ties in. It's all about authenticity and being vulnerable and all of that. And that kind of nicely segues into our last question about your book that you've recently written, and which is what I saw on Facebook. David posted about it, and I thought, I got to get that girl on my podcast. Creative Connections. Tell us about that.
So that book is, well, it's an interesting book because I guess there's like two big elements to it. The first one was from my childhood and having that deep sense of loneliness. When I was a fresh psychologist, I wanted to like cure loneliness for the world. It was the one thing that I thought it can't be that difficult and let's do it. And so I learned a lot about that in that, well, firstly, it's not a disease. You don't have to cure it. Secondly, there's nothing wrong with being lonely at different times in your life. In fact, it's normal. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, there's just so much information around that can be shared. Yeah. And then also when I first had my son, my firstborn, I was slapped right up against loneliness again as a new mum.
Why is that?
Well, I was one of the first in my friendship group to have a baby.
Right, yes.
So it wasn't like I had a lot of people on that same page. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what to expect. So I was actually quite shocked at how isolative your day can be when you've got a young baby. In that first year, I took the whole year off work thinking this is just going to be so wonderful. I'm going to do all this craft and cooking and we're just going to have so much fun. And it just wasn't like that. Mm. So my therapy at that point was to write a book.
Wow. And you can always find creative ways around a situation, yeah.
Yes, and I could do that while I was, you know, breastfeeding. I could do that while I was there was photographs taken of, you know, a little jungle, those little play jungles that they lie on their back and they kick things, and I'm playing that while I'm writing. And I guess it could be argued I wasn't in the moment enough, but it felt like it was filling my cup so that I had the energy to continue with my, you know, quests. And that book never got published, the big full book, but the part that really focused on connection, relationships, understanding the concept of loneliness, how we can make steps to remedy it, partly by not fearing being alone and accepting it as a part of our existence.
Yeah.
Also nurturing a relationship with yourself that's actually meaningful and true, so that you can actually be your own company. So that loneliness doesn't exist once you actually find a way to connect with yourself in an enduring, loving way. And then also just practical ways to reach out, deepen the friendships and connections you have, and make new ones.
Yeah, look, thank you for that. That sounds like I think it's an online book, isn't it? It's on digital.
It's actually paperback and online.
Yeah.
But if you want, obviously you can get the paperback just by ordering it on Amazon and having that, like my husband painted the cover, so I really love it if people get the paperback, but also you can buy it online as well.
So it's called Creative Connections by Christine Bagley-Jones.
That's it.
Yeah. So I hope you go and get it.
No pressure.
But I loved the last thing that you said about in the book there, that the most important relationship is the relationship with yourself. I think that's the primary relationship that we have to, because if you're not connected to yourself, how can you connect to another human being authentically? What's there to share if you don't know who you are and why you're here or anything about yourself? So that importance to connect with yourself authentically is so important.
So important.
And from what I understand, your online course, which is called say that again.
My Finest Life Project, which is an online retreat.
Tell us about that.
So I was, the initial dilemma was being in private practice, it's just me and one other person. And it's very effective and I love it. But all psychologists are pretty booked out these days and it's hard to get in and see a psychologist. And I had all this stuff that I wanted to share. So I started running the face-to-face retreats, which are still running, and they're 3 days in the northern New South Wales hinterland, and they're intense and they're wonderful. But the problem with that is, again, there's only one of me and it's difficult sometimes for people to take the time out or get to the location. So I dedicated a year to convert the retreat to an online experience.
Nice.
And the reason I call it an online retreat versus just a course is because I want the guest every week that they receive a module, which has got the 7 or 8 video lessons of myself, I want them to take that time for themselves. You get like amongst these other gifts you get in the mail, there's like a laminated sign that says, do not disturb, retreat in progress, to try to encourage them just to shut off from the world and dedicate this time to themselves. And there's homework they've got to do, and there's all these there's a me date they have to do each week. And then we do a live online catch-up each week where everybody gets to share, ask questions. Some of the stuff's pretty heavy, but in all the work that I do, whether someone's coming to me with depression, anxiety, substance misuse, adjustment disorder because, they're transitioning from one difficult thing to another or one good thing to another, the common threads I was able to pull together in this course so that it's around personally making sure this journey in life is unique to you and that you're not just ticking off days on a calendar.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that work that you've spent so much time putting together, Christine. I think it's so important in this time and day when we've got so many distractions, and it's so easy to get distracted, and you can sit scrolling on your phone for hours.
It's addictive.
Exactly. And instead, if you spend that same time discovering yourself, connecting with yourself, doing perhaps your online course, you can make your life something enjoyable and full of joy. So people can find your course on plenish.com. Is that the name
Plenish
of your?
Mind Health. So the
Plenish Mind Health.
Plenish Mind Health. Yep. .com.au.
Wonderful.
And then everything's there for them to have a little look at.
Fun question for you is, if your family were part of a reality TV show, what would it be called?
Gosh, I would not be putting that out to my friends to answer. I would say it might be Madness and Mayhem with Love.
Oh, I love it. That's how life is. And I mean, well, it's madness and mayhem no matter what, but love is the glue that would make it all kind of worthwhile.
I do feel it's fortunate that the kids have all grown up loving each other. If anything, that's been my life's work, ensuring that they have an abiding connection with one another. They don't always have to be getting on, but they have to resolve conflict.
Yeah.
If they're upset about something, which is normal, I really encourage them to, identify what the issues are and be proactive around trying to resolve it and not getting stuck, because I've said to them multiple times, of everything that I've ever given you in life, the biggest gift without a doubt are your siblings. And
beautiful.
For me, and thinking of my history, them having each other is such a healing experience, because I watch how they have each other's back. And my fourth child turned 18 recently, and the older three decided to celebrate with a long-awaited trip for 5 days in Melbourne together.
Gorgeous.
And I was worried because all of them away together without me doing any damage control, or also making sure that they're eating and, upright. But I also thought, if they have conflict down in Melbourne, this could create a new rift that maybe they haven't ever experienced, because that's a lot for them to do. And they got back, and all of them separately said it was such a brilliant trip. It was wonderful. They've been so close since. And my 18-year-old who was, being celebrated.
Is that Etienne?
Yeah, that was Etienne. Yeah. She said it was one of the most wonderful experiences. She feels so connected to her siblings, and they all have always got on well, but I just see this kind of like arriving. They're arriving
that's so
together.
Beautiful. What a gift you've given them, Christine.
And it won't always be that way. They'll have conflict and they'll have ups and downs. But
in this day and age, people have 1 and 2 children and 3 maximum. But to have 5 children and to pull it off and have them also connected to each other is like, they don't need to go get a community of people. They've got their own. Once they have kids and get married, man, they've got it made. That's it.
Well, I've said your friends are valuable too, and they're really important, but they will come and go for reasons outside your control often.
Yeah.
One thing you can count on is family. If you nurture them, prioritize them, value them, don't take them for granted, see them as the gift that they are.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe call it indoctrination, but they seem to have committed to it. And even with the little one, that's a big age gap, the surprise. She loves having the older siblings, and they do spend time realizing it must be not that easy for her. There's a 6-year gap. All the others are so close. So they all spend time with her and, let her feel special and very much included.
Beautiful. That's another big gift you've given to the world, apart from your loving relationship with David. Raising children that are close to each other and loving and learning how to resolve conflict between them. The biggest issue we have in the world, apart from disconnection, is a lack of good communication skills.
Yes.
If we have that, we can solve any problem. Any problem can be solved with language.
Absolutely. And language is the biggest vehicle to express yourself. So the more you understand about, your vocabulary and being able to articulate and then have that awareness of what you really want to say, you can move mountains with that.
Well, thank you so much for coming over here today to share yourself. I think we've given our audience lots to enjoy and certainly learn from and improve their lives. And it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Carolyn. I'll come on anytime you like.